Welcome to episode 5 of Algorithmically Incorrect Hockey. Episode 5 and the 5th episode of April, too, I think.
Well, yeah, we made it. 5-month April. I think April ends tomorrow's the last day. We made it 5 episodes from what was not an April Fool's joke, launching this show on April 1 to episode 5. And not only did we make it 5 episodes, Robert, we've actually had some more people tune in. We've had some pretty good guests. We're going to have some more good guests today. And it's turned into a pretty fun Wednesday tradition for me and you. And I know some people have joined in and tuned in with us and listened live and everything. So I'm legitimately happy to be here. So
I think the goal is for us to always be the least interesting people on our own show. And I think we've
Correct.
accomplished that 4 weeks in a row. And I think we're going to accomplish it again today with the people that may or may not be joining today.
I do think so. And as I said, we should have a couple guests on today. We will introduce them as they join the green room. I don't know what you call the back end of our digital studio, whatever you might call that, but that's
true. The foyer, is that a thing?
Yes.
I heard growing up in church there was a foyer sometimes. I still don't know what it is or where it is, but it exists somewhere.
Is a foyer a foyer that's just pronounced differently?
Yes, I think my mom probably demanded the foyer pronunciation because it sounds French and obviously that makes it fancy. So yeah. Foyer,
Okay,
foyer. I don't know where either of those are, but I'm sure they're somewhere in some building.
Yes.
Probably like a Vets Hall or something has a foyer, I would guess.
That makes sense. Yeah. Anywho, as we start every show, I think it's important for us to hop into some of the producer's notes and go to our let's go through some of our crack producer notes. You want to start, or do you want to go over your meeting with the producer first? Or you want me to go first today?
I think I started last week, so why don't you take it this time? Keep it fun.
Hi. I want to start with I think last week. Credit to production company, everyone around. I think we have figured out positive notes here. I think we've figured out some of how to tackle audio issues on the fly. We are hoping that we don't have to tackle them on the fly, but I would like to give a clap to the producer. This one primarily Robert, who's been tackling those audio issues on the fly. I wanted to give a update just because this is a new venture for both of us that we've been tackling for the people. Last week we had a couple people ask about the concept of super chats here on the YouTube platform, and for the to kind of give people an answer on that, we are not opposed to super chats. I think one of our early kind of goals of this was to build something before we worried too much about the money side of it. It's a big part of us. Like, there's a big kind of, I'm speaking for both of us here, and Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, the big thing is I want this to be something that you go and tell your friends to listen to. This is something that is a good show that delivers for that. I don't want you to feel like you're being sold goods or being asked for money on this, which is why that's been such an important part of our build for us. But because we've had a question about the super chats from some people, and obviously I know that's can be part of a little bit of the culture, the normalcy of some of these live stream shows. There's to give, I don't know how it worked at DLLS, so obviously where I was before and did some of this stuff where I don't know how it worked on the back end there, but I can tell you from Robert and I's channel, from a YouTube perspective, we need to get, we're halfway there where I'm looking at it right now. We have to get up to 500 subscribers. We're at 256 right now. So that's just to kind of give, if you want to help with the super chatness and that's important to you, tell your friends to subscribe. And then we also and then there's a certain amount of viewed hours within the last 12 months that have to happen for that to kind of go. So those are things that I hope happen in due time, but just to kind of give people an update on what that is. And it's not as simple as just flipping a switch because we aren't a big brand with a budget, and I think our net is negative $65 or whatever it was for paying for our StreamYard subscription to be able to host it. So we are that's kind of
in the meantime, though, I will say if you've got that money burning a hole in your pocket, if you see either me or Sean somewhere out and about, if you just come up to us and give us wads of cash, we'll give you a high five, and that'll be like a real life super chat, which I'm told is like you could even, put it on InstaFace or one of the book chats or whatever the things are these days. And how cool would that be? That sounds way cooler than
Yes.
like the whole thing on a YouTube to me. Just
Snap tube, something like that, right? That's all of that. Like,
high five snap tube with
Yes.
with cash. I mean, look, I'm just coming up with innovative ways to make everyone happy, and I think that's a pretty good one if I'm honest.
it's the pre-NIL college sports payoff of the $500 handshakes with boosters for college football programs.
It's more like MIL, like money in, or MIRL, I guess, money in real life. Yeah, we'll workshop it.
We'll work on that. But I wanted to give that update and just kind of but that's important for me. It's kind of cool to me that someone would even think about bringing that up. So that to me is that's why that's under my producer notes for this week.
Yes, very cool. My only producer note is on the back end. One of the fun things is when the audio gets uploaded to, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or some of those other, I think it's on like Amazon and Pocket Casts, a few other places too. Sometimes some of the more adventurous stuff that you might see live might get smoothed over by the time the audio upload happens. So if you really want to see the good stuff, this is the place to get the raw, unfiltered director's cut. So the producer said that it's important to market this as a very raw, live experience, much like Taylor Swift's Eras concerts. The producer said this is basically a 1-to-1 comparison between those two.
Yes.
This is basically that.
Same thing. Definitely.
Slightly better outfits in this show, but yeah.
Yes. Definitely the case. And then the other just note I wanted to just on that, just from, it's kind of cool to say this because we're in 5 shows deep on this now. It's, if whatever platform you are watching it, whether it's on YouTube, whether you're listening to the audio platform, whether it's through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other ones, go and give it a like and do all that rating stuff. I hate asking for that because it's not really why we're doing this, but it does help with the kind of with more people learning about it. So that being said, I think that's good for producer notes. We will have we should have our first guest in about 7 minutes or so based off our scheduled planning. So before we get into them, I wanted to talk a little bit. I just wanted to go into last night, Robert. You were in Dallas. There was a pretty big playoff game between the Stars and the Minnesota Wild, and at least one team got the memo.
Yeah, I think what would I say? The worst part of that game from a fan experience, I'm guessing, was when the Stars entered the third period trailing 2-1 and neither team put a shot on goal for like 7 minutes. Like, it was just one of those, not only is the trailing team and the home team not making a big push right away, although they did actually mount some pressure later. But it's not even going to be like a fun, wide open game, regardless of the result. It very much profiled as, this is going to be boring and maybe a little bit hopeless for the home side. It got a little bit more interesting late, but one of the teams came out and kind of made a statement and continued to make the same statement that they've been making about 5-on-5 offense and all that stuff. And the credit to 38-year-old Matt Zuccarello, who apparently is the pillar of Minnesota's offense, because he came back in their power play. Everything just looks unbeatable all of a sudden. So I wish I was that useful at 38 years old to be that important to any team that I was on.
Yeah, he's one of the guys who I kind of made a note of this when I wrote off the game last night, but he's one of the guys who he was part of one of the wildest sequences I've ever covered around the trade deadline. And it's he gets the Stars traded for him. This was in 2018. This was 2018-19, I believe. Correct. If I've got,
yep, and that's right.
And the first game after the deadline, he left New York. He meets the team in Chicago for a day game, and there's this absolutely crazy shift that one of the craziest shifts I've ever seen in a game that happens in that game. I'll always remember this shift where Radek Faksa goes and scores at the other end of the ice while Jason Dickinson is actively getting in a fight in the defensive zone. These things kind of simultaneously happening in the United Center, which was kind of fun.
It's like someone was at the terminal for a hockey game and they accidentally pushed all the buttons and flipped all the switches at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. And Zuccarello comes in as a pretty nice assist in his first game and takes a puck right to here. I don't remember whether the arm correct or not, but and breaks the bone in the in the forearm right there, and
which bone is that, by the way, Dr. Sean? Just really quickly, in your forearm.
I don't know the
Is that the ulna or the radius or the tibia? Is that that might be leg? I don't know.
To use the famous words of Lindy Ruff when he once told me about an injury Brett Ritchie had, and when I asked whether it was upper body or lower body, he said it depends on where his hand is.
It's either upper or lower, depending.
So
excellent. Yeah, took a puck right there, and it was out, like all but one game of the regular season,
Came back for the final regular season game, and then played through that playoff series against both Nashville and St. Louis. And
he might have picked up another injury in the playoffs too, as I recall.
Yeah, and he was actually really good despite the injury, and kept getting was getting shots into the arm to basically freeze it so he could play. And so it was I wish I would have been able to cover him a little closer in my career, just because he's such a fun player to watch. And there's some great Matt Zuccarello stories from his impact on hockey in Norway. But like one of the other funny things, one of my favorite Zuccarello stories that I've heard about him is he is someone who oftentimes when players trade sticks, it's for like collector purposes, right? Like it's kind of like you're going to like Alex Ovechkin famously has a very large stick collection. Zuccarello has traded sticks and then tried to use those sticks in games and practices.
I did not know this.
Just to kind of try and see what other players use. So it was definitely a fun story. Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of fun stories, we have our first guest today who I suspect will have one or two fun stories of his own to share. I actually had the pleasure of being on a group podcast with him many, probably close to a decade ago now, when also the Wi-Fi was going terribly. So I don't even know if the final edit ended up being semi-listenable, but he was very generous with his time. I suspect that today will go even better than that. How's that for a high bar? So
yes.
We'll bring him in right now, but please welcome to the show, Kelly Forbes.
Hey guys, how you doing? Robert,
Kelly,
Sean, how you doing? Good. How are you guys? Surviving today after last night?
I think we are. Robert was the only one in the trenches in the post-mortem dealing with the reactionary in the bowels of the AAC last night. So I think Robert's health check is more important than the rest of us right now. So.
Well, I'm curious about, as a former NHL video coach, Kelly, I'm curious about when you have a successful coach's challenge like Chris and Patrick had last night. Is it kind of like certain superstar players where if you score a great goal but the team loses, there's part of you that's like, well, terrible result, but hey, little badge on the chest. Like, obviously not your team player and everything, but that's got to be a good feeling when that happens, right?
You're right though. It's a funny feeling because you're obviously part of the team and that's all that matters. But there is that pride because you put a lot of work and there's not that many. There's nothing like it in the playoffs to have one in the playoffs. I remember to think about it. It's a funny story, but I think Game 7 against St. Louis and whenever that was, 2016 or whatever. Well, yeah, 2016. I got a challenge, and my joke from that point on was it would have been 7-1 instead of 6-1 if it wasn't for me. So, so I think that's what the final score was. And I remember thinking, and it's funny because you make it, you've never felt anything like the emotions and the ups. It's there's nothing better as a video coach to helping your team because that's a big way of helping your team. And then if it goes downhill from there, it's a little tough. But so it is a weird feeling.
I do remember when I think it must have been it was late in the 2019 season, and it was Jim Montgomery. He told me, I want to lead with this story because he told me he didn't want to hold this one against your record. I can't remember what the instance was, but there was a challenge where
it was the St. Louis series.
Yeah,
it was the St. Louis series.
Yep.
I know exactly what one it was. Yeah. I remember them all. Yeah. He wanted. It was on the road. It wasn't game, so it must have been game 5. That's my guess, and it was back there. The world changed. Our world as a video coach changed when it became a penalty, because that's when it got serious. And it was serious before, and it was a big play when you got him. But there was a lot of challenges back then where it was like, it's probably worth it here. And that's when I said, no, it's not going to get overturned to Monty. And he said, I think it's worth it here. We can calm down and calm the building, especially when you're on the road. Back then, you would get a longer timeout, and that's all it was a timeout back then. So I think I missed on my actual record, I've only missed 2 offsides, and one of them was Lindy Ruff just like, we're taking a longer timeout here, and that was his decision. He's the head coach; he can make that decision. But back then, it was it took longer for them to get the iPad, go through the process, all that stuff, and especially when you're on the road, let's calm this building down, get the team reset and start again. And I think I tell this story all the time. Like, I told Lindy it's not offside, or it was close, but it wasn't. He said, I'm going to challenge it, and we're going to reset. And he did, and we scored the next shift. I remember Jason Spezza scored the next shift, and I was like, that's why he's head coach. He makes those decisions. It was smart. But when it's a penalty, it's a different world. So, but yeah, I appreciate Monty. Monty was always honest with me on that. I was great with that, because it was his decision, but he's the head coach. He can make those decisions.
You mentioned how much your world changed when it went from just burning your time out to becoming a penalty. My recollection, and correct me on this if I'm wrong, but even before the challenge was there at all, how much did your job change as a video coach when suddenly that's a new element during games? It's not just about prepping film and analyzing it. And maybe, I'm sure you were still breaking stuff down in games and looking for advantages and everything.
Yeah.
But how did your job change when the challenge came in?
I mean, if you look at the teams, I don't know what it is now, but I think what the big part of it is now you see 2 video coaches on the team. There's an assistant and head video coach. There's still some teams that I don't think have it, and good for them, because that's a lot. But I think it became so important. And then also still the role of breaking the game down, relaying information. There's so much technology and everything getting to the bench that I think now it just made it so important to have a second guy, to have those other set of eyes, to go through the process, to also. I mean, I'd be looking at the blue line. You're zooming in on a blue line camera, and then also the plays going on. There's no way I could be marking it and getting that information to the coaches, and post game if there's something they ask for, and I'm like, sorry, I was zooming in on a was a skate on the air, was it not back then? That kind of stuff. So it just became so important to have a second guy, and that's why I think most teams do it now.
It's one of the things I really liked about Jim Montgomery covering him was I got to sit in with you for a story during that season, and it was kind of cool to kind of see the firsthand kind of I think it's kind of funny, like, for someone sitting at home watching the game, right? And you might say, oh, that looks like a close call or whatever. Can you kind of give in your words, kind of give our viewers and listeners kind of the idea of what it's like when a puck enters the offensive zone? What's the checklist going in that back room like for you guys?
Yeah. So again, I don't think people realize kind of what does go in and how much technology and almost how much we have. Like, I'll walk through it, but we have the views we have that are instant, that we can rewind, check. We have the 2, basically the program feeds for both teams. So, we're playing St. Louis, they have a program feed, we have a program feed, like at the time, Fox Sports Southwest. That's how old I am. Victory Plus now, I guess. But and then we got the 2 overheads, which were right above the goalies, and then 4 blue line cameras. So from both each side on each blue line. So right away, and you get used to this when you're doing it. Exactly what you're looking for. I visited. So when we first found out we were going to do challenges, I went and actually sat in with the Texas Rangers, because they had the same technology system, which is the Hawkeye.
Okay.
And so what I realized is that these guys were so good at what they did. They knew going into if it was going to be a play at first, or they knew camera 6 or camera 8 or whatever it was. And so I realized I had to come up with my system it was a keyboard, but I had to come up with my system, what camera I wanted to go to right away. So if it entered the left side of our zone in the first period, I knew I'm looking at, say, number 4, camera 4, whatever it is. So you've got to save those seconds every time you get. So basically setting up my keyboard to what I knew, and as the play was going on, the best look's going to be the camera 4. Boom, you switch it over. Oh, there's a foot in the way, you got to block it. Next look, camera 6. Whatever it was, and you'd have your keyboard set up. And so you go through that process. Having an assistant, I would let him know, communicating, hey, this is close, but I don't know. Give me a second, like, I'm going to go through a process. So he'd keep an eye, because the other problem is, I'll go through the worst nightmares as a video coach, but the other problem is the play's still going on. Is there going to be a goalie interference play? Is it actually going to exit? And oh yeah, this is offside, and hey, challenge, but it had gone out and come back in or something like that. So you always have that set of eyes. Is is keep you updated. So I'd always make sure my assistant was keeping an eye, let me know if there's anything else that is close or anything going on. As I go through my process of going through each camera and zooming in and checking on that. And we did that every entry. So I mean, there was tons of times where I'd let the bench know, hey, this is offside, and we know, before the puck goes in. You'll actually, it's funny. We used to talk to Jeff Reese was the best about it, but he would always be like, I just felt so much better when I knew it was offside. Like I didn't have that intensity when they're going around in the zone, and he's like, it's all right, it's offside. We're okay.
It's like an offside penalty in football or whatever. It's like, okay,
yeah,
free play here.
Yeah, free play here. There's a free play here. Yeah, so you don't want to see the goalie give one in, or let one in, but yeah. So we go through that process, and then I wouldn't let the bench know. I would only let them know if it was offside, but then all right, back to normal and get back to it. So, but every entry that's what was that was our job, to flip it over. And sometimes it would be obvious right away, or you can even look at the camera one or the game feed, and right away that it's not offside, and you just move on. But I pause just in case. Over prepared than under prepared on everyone. So,
yep. I'm curious. I don't know how much you necessarily keep up with the league and everything now, and goalie interference, and all sorts of challenges this year for hand pass and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
I guess I'll keep it broad. What are your thoughts about, now that we've got around a decade or so of the Coaches Challenge and replay being used the way it is in the NHL? Do you think it's gotten away from us a little bit? I have mixed feelings about the offside review. Goalie interference seems like it gets more nebulous each year. But as someone who is in that world, what have you seen from the development of the Coaches Challenge over the years?
Yeah, I mean, there's no perfect answer, because the league wants to get it right, and that's a good thing. We want to get it right. I have mixed feelings too, because I think they knew this going in, and they knew what was going to. But they opened a can of worms on a lot of these plays that we thought were pretty black and white. Like offside isn't black and white. Everyone's like, no, offside's easy. I'm like, it's not in those circumstances. There's possession. There's maybe the camera's blocked. You don't have a good view. Each angle is different from what camera, so it looks offside on the camera coming from the center line, but it's not offside. Is his foot up? Is it foot down? When I was first doing it, so I think they realized that there was, especially with goalie interference, they opened a can that they probably wish they never did. But again, you're trying to get the egregious one wrong, get the egregious ones right. The Matt Duchene's wing in Colorado, he's 15 feet offside. They didn't want that in the playoffs. Some of the goalie interference, we had a couple, and when I first started, we didn't have coach or goalie. I can't remember what one it was, but I remember Kari letting him get pushed.
Absolutely shoveled out of the crease in Detroit.
Who was that again? It was Kari getting.
It was Kari. Was it Abdelkader? Who was it in Detroit? It was someone like
Abdelkader.
that.
It was Abdelkader.
Yeah, it was Abdelkader.
100%. You're 100% right. It was Detroit against Abdelkader, and those are the ones they want. They don't want that as your deciding a playoff game. Mm-hmm. So I get why they did it, but again, it opened up. The technology wise, I would love for it all to go to the league, but that's also hard, especially during the regular season. Because there is certain things that we don't get. I'll tell you right now, as a video coach, our biggest nightmare was, there's a play, we don't have a great view, because again, we only have the program feeds, the 4 blue lines, and the overhead, so we don't have every camera angle. And so if TV doesn't replay it right, say our blue line camera's blocked, and there's a foot in the way, so you can't actually see where the puck is from both sides or whatever it is. Camera one, you can't really tell. The program, they don't replay it, and we go, you know what, you only have this information, this is your job, I only have this information, it might be offside, but I don't have a definitive look. And then so you say, no, don't challenge. A minute later, TV comes back with a different look that you didn't have, and it's offside. That's our worst nightmare, right? So I'd rather get rid of those situations, and the league be able to take over if they can with the, in the future. It might not be feasible right now, but I do think that's where the future is not putting it on the video coach in the league, but it made our job important, a lot more important. So I'm not saying I don't like it. I loved it. Some of the video coaches didn't like that part of the job. I loved it. It was my way of contributing, not scoring a goal or not saving a goal, but in a way doing that. So I embraced it, and I love that. Some guys don't really like it, and there's also situations that you're putting guys in tough spots without the proper technology. Like in baseball, because of the buildings, because they're not changing over concerts and not changing over, they have every camera. They know every camera. So in baseball, they had every camera. The video coaches in the NHL don't have every look, So it's they might have more now. I think they got some kind of overhead from the jumbotron, is what Patty told me. Patrick Dolan told me that they've added a couple things, but
for like
the
whole half of the
yeah,
ice.
because you have only those certain looks, so you don't. Sometimes you have to wait for replays because there's a backside camera that isn't in your feed, and you don't have that, and so sometimes TV will play that, and sometimes they don't, or maybe they show it later. So it is a little bit, I don't know, frustrating is the right word, but it is a little bit challenging there because there are ones that, I mean, there's important. There's a lot on the line on these decisions. So if you don't have all the technology on all the feeds, it sometimes gets frustrating.
Was there ever any dialogue? I'm sure Sean has a question. I'm just really curious. Was there ever any dialogue between you guys and the production crew at, I guess, Fox Sports? I mean, a lot of those guys are still there too. About, hey, you gotta lead with this replay, or make sure you show this angle when it's this sort of play or something like that.
100%. And that's when I first started. Like, I started on the TV side of things, so I had a great relationship with Mark Vittorio, Jason Walsh, Razor, Ralph at the time, but now Josh, and John Sponsor. So I worked with those guys. So I had a great. We'd go out for dinner all the time and talk, and I actually would sit down and walk them through scenarios. And if they saw something, Johnny Sponsor would run a lot of the replays, and he, Vito and Walsh would have a lot going on. And I just like, hey, if you see something, don't hesitate to throw it. So you might have been watching the broadcast back then, and all of a sudden there's a random replay showing the high wide of the blue line. You're like, well, that didn't really show anything. He's probably showing me that it might have been offside or something like that. So I had a great relationship with those guys, and they were great to me, and we discussed it all the time. So 100%, we talked all the time. We looked into a situation where could we have a basically a phone line right to them.
Makes sense.
In the truck, like I'm looking, I don't see it, and this is important. It might be offside, and I would just push a button, and it didn't come to that, but we talked about through these scenarios about how do we get every view and everything, and they did a great job. And there's been a couple plays that I did that there was a high stick one I remember, and we had it on the coach's cam. So we would have a coach's cam that we worked with, but it wasn't a TV cam, so it wouldn't go to the NHL, wouldn't go to the TV truck. And we saw that it was a high stick, but we didn't have a view that would go back to the NHL to overturn it. And so it was an awkward angle, so it was really tough to see. And everything we saw on the TV side of things, we couldn't see the actual high stick, so we never challenged. I went to Johnny that night, Johnny Sponsor, who ran it, and I actually texted him during the intermission. I said, hey, do you have a feed? Because I was actually feeling pretty rough, or not rough, but bad. Like, I'm like, okay, I wanted to challenge, but we can't. And he said TV didn't have a look, and so we didn't challenge and made the right decision. It was high stick, but sometimes they don't have that certain look. I mean, it's sometimes hard. So it wasn't a high stick; it was a hand pass. It was a hand pass up high, but so you work really closely with those guys, because they've got the feed that obviously goes back to the NHL, and that's where the decision's made, right? So, or NHL to the refs.
So you had the evidence, but the evidence that wasn't admissible in court, basically, for the
100%. Yeah. And you can't, and that's what, going through the process, you have to just what you have in front of you. You have to decide with the information you have in front of you. You can't go off of feel, or can't go off of, well, it looks offside or might be offside, and hope. And I can't challenge off of hope. So there's a couple, and I'll admit it. My only regrets, I had two regrets of ever challenging. I've got wrong. There's no doubt about it. But the only two regrets, I didn't go through my process, and one of them was I was hoping for I think it was offside, and I was hoping for a look in the future that they would have in TV, and TV didn't have it. And so you can't make decisions off of hope in a way. You got to just take what's in front of you. Patty knows that. That's a good thing. Patty knows what he's doing.
Yeah. So I got a couple follow-ups, and first one I wanted to go with is you're looking the offside one. There is a line, right? And so first I want to stick with one of an offside perspective. Now being based in Detroit, I talked to Ken Daniels, who's the play-by-play broadcaster for the Red Wings, and one of Ken's ideas that Ken has really liked and has pitched and has brought up on the broadcast in Detroit. And he's talked about moving the offside line, not moving the blue line. But right now, I don't know if anyone listening knows this, that offside is the is moving right now. Offside, it's the back of the blue line, right? Like it's the back.
Yeah, it's the lead on the entry and the back of the
yes.
when in the zone.
Ken's push has been making the front of the blue line the line for entries as well. And
so if you touch the blue line, it's the puck on the entry. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so I wanted to kind of throw it to you as someone who's kind of actually studied this, because Ken's talked about it from a broadcast perspective, because in his mind, this would help with some of the edge cases and would kind of help with a little bit more of the keep getting back to the spirit of the rule as opposed to some of the. So I wanted to throw it to you on the we'll call it the Ken Daniels rule, and I'm not the person that phrased that, but Ken's talked about it quite a bit.
Yeah, I would. You know what? This is what the NHL does really well, because they would actually come to us at the coach association meetings, and they would have, this is the amount of numbers. This is what, like when they did it with the skate in the air versus skate on the ice. They went through for the last 5 years, they went through every entry that was called offside, would it be on, and they came up with the actual number. So I would love to see the actual case study on would that make a difference or does it make a difference? Like I can't think. I'm trying to think how it would work. The problem is, again, it goes back to, I know it's a line, it looks good, but it's still through ice. It's not the perfect like setup where there's like a straight line. Like it's sometimes little in so it wouldn't be perfect. Again, I'd hate to answer this because I would love to see the case study in the NHL could do that. Maybe he will. I know he's busy, so he probably won't be able to do that. But I would actually love to see how many it saves, how many it doesn't. Did it make a difference? I in my mind right now, I can't. I can't decide if it would save some of those situations, because again, I would hope that the league wants to get it right. So whatever the rule is, they don't want to screw teams over or put the video coach in a bad spot. So if it makes sense, then I think that'd be a great idea. I just don't know what the numbers would tell you if it does make sense.
Yeah, it seems like, intuitively at least, it seems like it would help the attacking team, because lateral entries, like when you're traveling diagonally or whatever, you gain the zone, you gain
that spot. And you know what? We're trying to create more offense, just like the Dallas Stars are right now, 5-on-5. So so maybe that extra little bit would help. You give, and you know what? That's what we want. I mean, the game's so fast, it's so great. So if you give them that extra, it might be just good for the game. It might not matter offside wise, but it just gives the players a little that little bit more time to make a play in the zone. So I can see that definitely, because we're trying to create more offense. Teams
then from kind of the other follow-up I had, just from the kind of the goalie interference one, obviously much murkier territory, and one that's evolved, and now it's been a couple of years since, and because I think one of the things that people don't know is, and you talked about the league kind of, it would be before, I believe it was before the season every year, the league would kind of go over with you guys, right? Of like, this is what is supposed to be goalie interference and what isn't. And obviously you haven't been privy to that internal meeting in a couple of years now, but when you look at kind of the evolution of that, and I don't want to be too technical on this, but with kind of the way the position has evolved too, like what was that kind of like as you kind of get to the case? And obviously we got the fresh in mind last night of the Boley goal that gets challenged for the goalie on Jake. So
the league made it pretty clear that the blue was the most important thing. So when you're making that decision, you look at where the contact is in the blue, and you can go from there. I'll just tell you, I'll go back. For me, the hardest goalie that I ever had, and not because he was great and he was unbelievable. We were great communicators and great talk through it. But Anton Hudobin played outside the blue, and that's where it got really hard for me, because he would be interfered with, and he'd come in and not be mad at me, but like, Kelly, why did we not challenge that? Walk me through this. I'm like, Anton, you're 6 inches outside into the white. We're not getting that call. So the league made it pretty clear, and they would talk through it. The contact has to be in the blue. So the evolution of it, I think because goalies are bigger and it's back, it might be almost easier now. And I shouldn't say that because it's not easy. I'm kind of joking, but the first thing you look for is where's the contact? Is it in the blue? If it's in the white, I mean, you may as well just move on if you see any kind of contact, even unless it's so blatant that it's he's running you over. So the evolution, I just think, I don't know if the league's tried their best to it's just so gray. You're not going to find the black and white one. So it's so gray. I think they've just tried to make with more and more of these opportunities or more chances. I mean, how many there have been for, what do you say, 10 years or whatever it's been, they just try to keep the standard as close to possible on all of them. And what they've decided is it starts in the blue, and that's where you work off of as a video coach. You have to understand that you got to get emotion out of it. You just have to look at it. Where's the contact? Okay. Then you work through the process. So my first look, you go right to the overhead. And if the contact is in the blue, now you start looking at other looks. Was it intentional? Did our guys push it in, push the player in? How did the contact happen? What was it intentional? So there's a lot from there.
Have you seen some of the challenges this year that maybe have surprised some folks where there's even been contact in the blue and it's still, the goal has still stood?
Yeah.
Does it seem like
I've
things
seen
are
a little
shifting
bit
to you?
I don't know, and that's where I shouldn't answer because I haven't watched enough. I don't, like I said, for whatever years, 10 years or whatever it was when I was in the league, I watched every single challenge or not challenge, every challenge or goal interference that played every year. Like that was my work, my daily routine is wake up and watch every one that happened the night before, and I go through it and kind of process why things happen. So I've seen some that I'll just say I'm glad I didn't have to make the decision. So there's ones that I'm glad there's some that I get why they challenge it, but I also understand why the league didn't. It's just it's not, there's nothing going to be perfect about it, and that's the hard part, right? Because it is so obviously penalizing when you make a decision to challenge it, and it's a penalty. So I think the league wants to do less challenges. So I don't know if that's where the trend is going. Again, I'm just thinking they'd rather let it happen on the ice, but there's certain ones like last night, great job by Patty and Chris going through their process and where was conduct. Did you not allow Jake to play his position while he was in the blue, and they made a great job on that one. I went back, I wasn't watching because I'm coaching my rider, my 10-year-old. I'm the 10U coach now, not the video coach. So I was first and second, but I felt my phone just blowing up in my pocket as I'm coaching my sons. So I actually knew it was a challenge because my phone only blows up now when there's a challenge and everyone's asking me what I think. And then I went back and watched it after my son's game was done, and I knew what the answer was. So it always makes it easier when you know what the answer is, and that the guys challenged, but they did a good job there.
It's you're coaching your son's game. You actually get to watch the game live. That's one of the funny things that I remember saying that to, I can't remember who I said it to, but talking to you right when you made the decision that it was time to step away from working with the NHL team, where it was, you hadn't watched a game live since I think it was like a preseason game where there wasn't video set up or something like that. Like it had been almost a decade of, other than being in the bubble, you hadn't been able to watch a live NHL game.
No. And even then I was like in a suite behind a curtain. Yeah. We were breaking it down. So what was it? I was like, I never did the final numbers, like 1,200 regular season games. And I don't know how many regular or playoff games. And I had never seen a live game, at least Dallas Stars. We were in El Paso for a preseason game, and Rick Bowness, there was no video. I mean, talk about a barn. It was a barn. And so we were in El Paso there, and Rick Bones is like, come on up, let's sit on the bench. And I tracked face-offs from there. I always saw the story. So it was the only game I was on the bench. And so Bones was great. And we're playing Arizona, it must have been. And it's a PK, and I'm tracking the face-offs, and we're on the power play. They're on the PK, and they win the face-off. So I go to look down to write down that we lost, who it was against who, because we track all this stuff. But we didn't at the time. We didn't have the technology at the time, so I'm actually doing it by hand. Now it's all iPads. And the D-man comes around the net, and as I'm about to mark, I'm like, you should probably keep your head up, because I'm not used to keeping my head up to see it. And he rips it at our bench. And it's coming right at me. And it was I can't remember who it was. It doesn't matter, but they put their hand up and missed the puck, and it hit me. I turned and it hit me square in the hip, and I had a puck mark there. And I'm like, this is perfect. I've been on the bench for one game, and I get smoked by a puck. So that was the only time I ever got on the bench. I watched we played LA one time, and the next day we had a day off, and then we were going to play Anaheim. And the next day Anaheim had played, they were going to play it back to back. So we actually drove down to Anaheim and I watched the game. That was my first NHL game to watch in like, I don't know, 10 years or 14 years, whatever it was. And then, so yeah, now I get to watch live ones with beer in my hand, which is, it's a lot of fun, a lot better, a lot more, well, a lot less stressful.
You mentioned Rick Bowness, and I think that's a great way to get into this because of obviously with Glenn Goltz and getting the hire, and you worked for Glenn in status in his first stint as the head coach in Dallas, and you've worked because I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was Mark Crawford who hired you, right?
Mark Crawford, yep. Mark Crawford hired me.
For Mark Crawford, Glenn Goltson, Lindy Ruff, you worked for Hitch, you worked for Jim Montgomery, you worked for Rick Bowness, you worked for Pete DeBoer, and obviously you worked for Glenn during time one. So every Stars coach since 2010 has worked with Kelly Forbes.
That's true.
For you, what kind of, and it's kind of interesting because I'm watching right now, obviously Lindy's back in Buffalo, and we see Rick's in Columbus. He was actually on our show a couple weeks ago. When you kind of got working with the different personalities of your job, obviously changed with technology, but your job probably also changed with the way different coaches looked at tech and way things rolled. And so like when you kind of look through coaches you worked with and how that evolved with the way the head coach interacted, what did you kind of take away from that kind of that decade plus of working with all those coaches there?
Yeah, I was lucky. What a great list that is. I got to learn from some of the best. I mean, you go through it and that's some of the best NHL coaches of all time, success or not success. They've had success everywhere. So I was very lucky, and I, each one of them brought something different. That was really cool. Actually, I remember having lunch with Razor one time, and he's like, you need to write a book about this because all these guys and all this information I had on this. And I agreed, but I'm not going to do it. I don't know how you guys write books like that. I don't have enough time. Maybe after I stop coaching my 10U team, I'll write a book on it. But every guy,
you hire Sean to ghostwrite it. I think.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
well,
I need somebody. I just talked and they.
Yeah. The other problem is after you're done with the 10U team, I believe there's an 11U age group.
Yeah, you're right. It's not going away. You're right. Maybe, but they're gonna have real coaches soon. Okay. So we'll see. Yeah. So I think, and I've done some talks or whatever to young video coaches, and I think the most important thing, luckily for me, is you got to be flexible. You got to adapt, because not only to technology, to the way the leagues run, to new rules, whatever it is, to your coaches, and you got to bring something every year. So my big goal every year was to bring something new and try to get better that way, and also adapt to whatever coach needed. There's no set rules of a video coach. This is a general idea, but you've got to, every coach that came in had different ideas or different things and needed different things. So I just needed, I was flexible. I brought value every day. I tried and adapt to what they need, because you're right, everyone was different. I was, again, really lucky that I worked under some of the best, but one of my biggest strengths was to adapt.
I'm curious, did you ever pick up things, of course you're going to break down a play or look at, this route or this coverage decision or something, but were there ever times where you picked up, this guy, we've just been kind of picking up on video that maybe this guy started taking a different route, or maybe there's some small injury or something, was there secondary or tertiary stuff that started coming out to you as you did it more, where you just started realizing you were picking up this other stuff that wasn't necessarily the primary goal of the play?
Yeah, and hockey's such a hard one because it's such a flow sport. It's a flow sport, right? So it's not like Justin Jefferson is better at this route, or where you're so there is some flow to it, because you don't want to go. You also don't want to make the guys overthink. You don't want to go to your D-man like, hey, Essa, Connor McDavid likes to take 2 steps this way and go that way, and then Nelson, he's turned inside out because he does the exact opposite, right? So, and you didn't want him to get too wide. Where I had the most fun, and especially in playoffs, I loved breaking down faceoffs, that was my favorite, because that was a set play, and I felt like you can gain advantage there on video, based on power play and PK are the similar, where you can see certain tendencies. 5-on-5, it's a little harder. You would have, you know how teams in their structure and their systems, so there would be certain breakouts that that they, 60-75% of the time they come up the strong side, and you skinny your forecheck based on that, but it wasn't hey, they're coming up the strong side 100% of the time. So there's never, or certain players, hey, they have this move, or they go inside, or they're going to pull up here because of that. You don't want to put that, because it's never 100% on the flow side of things. But face-offs, there was. So face-offs, you knew their system, and there was ways to break that down. So I think the guys always joke that you've never seen Kelly happier, and if there was a challenge or a face-off goal, I was a happy guy after the face-off goal, breaking that down. So
what was kind of it's interesting now, because there's some, as the league has evolved, right? Like, and there's video work. When you first got into the league, there was guys who may have done video work before they got to the NHL, but it was something where now every single kid who's entering the league, whether it's from college, the CHL, they've video work has been part of their daily since they were 14, 15 years old, right? So
yeah.
What was kind of, you kind of saw that evolution firsthand of both I think obviously Jason Robertson's the poster child for me. We see him watching every single shift on the iPad, right? Like, goes to the bench, gets the iPad and everything like that. What was kind of the evolution for you watching the intake of the player using that data versus, like, it's probably now where it used to be you kind of had to maybe force them into the video room a little bit more, to now sometimes you hear, obviously John Tortorella is the most famous one of saying, we got to take the iPad away from him, right? So, like, what was kind of that evolution of the way the player grew up with technology and grew up with video? How did that impact kind of your career arc there?
Yeah, and you're 100% right. I mean, there's, when I first started, I had one computer there was a room in our practice facility, and one computer, and I put the game on it with the DVD every day. I put the game and it break down, and you're trying to mark. They didn't have the automatic upload where you can download everyone's shifts right away. Like, I was marking during the game, and I'm watching it going, okay, this is, and I'd have a button that would be like, that's line 1, that's line 2. But then Lindy or Mark would change the lines halfway through the period, and I'm trying to switch my stuff. And so, but there was one computer. Some of the guys would go in, not very many back in the day. It was just there in case they wanted. Most of the time they'd go back and see a goal or, whatever. And then as the technology showed up in juniors and showed up in college, and even probably, obviously in high school and or not high school, but juniors or AAA hockey, guys that grew up playing through it started watching. I remember the two guys that really started watching it and wouldn't miss a day. Louis Erickson wouldn't miss a game, and Brad Richards. Those two kind of were the ones first off that I remember being like, okay, this is a thing. I think I started to have to get multiple computers, because that's the first time I realized that, and laptops, I shouldn't say computer, that sounds old, but and I'd started building my thing, and then eventually I had 3 in there, and then it would be full every morning, and then eventually I think I had 6, and then it turned into iPads and setup. So as I think that was the early time when I realized that they're starting, and then it turned to clouds. But I used to put it on like a DVD, or I would have a thumb drive, and I'd move the game over. That's how I first did it. I'd break it down on DVD or whatever, and then I'd put it on thumb drive and move it over the computer. And if I had a busy morning, I remember Brad Richards would come into me sometimes like, hey, Forbes, are you going to get it on the computer? I'm like, just a second, Mark Crawford, or sorry, Lindy Ruff is not very happy right now. I'll try to get down there. But so, and then eventually now everything's on the cloud, right? So the game's uploaded. The game, Patty uploaded it 2 minutes after the game. Actually, it's probably uploading live now, during the game. So the guys get home, they all have their own iPads and own IDs and how to get on, and they can watch the shifts at night. So they don't have to wait till they get to the practice facility the next day. So they're all used to it now. They grew up in it. It's so important, the instant feedback. So it has been a wild change, but now they're all doing it.
Goldson said earlier this year, we were talking about review. He still cuts his own, by the way, too. He'll go
Yeah.
in and cut his own video, which I'm sure a lot of head coaches still do just because it's habit at this point. But he said that players now, even compared to 15 years ago in his first go round, they're so quick to communicate something they might get from up top from a video guy and to communicate to a player, and the player immediately can picture it like, oh yeah, they can metabolize it and implement it like on the next shift in a way that wasn't necessarily the case 15, 20 years ago.
No, they absorb things so fast and see things and understand things from the video side. That yeah, it's I'm not saying the back then everyone was stubborn, but they played their game and they kind of had their picture in their head. But now, like I think everyone talks about, video doesn't lie. So, I think you have to adapt. You have to use it. It's a tool. It's not the only answer, but it's, it's a way to absorb things and how to get it fast. I think it's so important to have, but it can't convolute your mind or make you slow because you're thinking too much. So, but I think they've gotten used to it where they can absorb it right away and process it and go out and play fast. So, and that's been a big change. A lot of times guys wouldn't be able to do that. That's just it would get too much on their heads. That's too much information. Let's move on.
Last one for me on the back in the video room. Then I want to get to a couple other things before we let you go. But there's one of the funnier things, and I think we've gotten so much further in it where the watch the game versus look at the data have met in the middle more and more. But it was always very funny from an outside perspective where there was you got to watch the game or you can't use the numbers or whatever, right? Like that was the big discourse in hockey and everything like that. And I always found it pretty hilarious where people in your role whose job was to watch the game more than anyone else were also the ones looking at the numbers. Like you're just talking about track and face-offs and it was just kind of and so when you kind of look at the way the analytics, and because I'm just using the catch-all phrase for that, and the analytics and the data and the video work together, where do you see it is now? Obviously with respect to, you haven't been in that room for the couple of years, but just what it was and how much those two things really, for lack of a better word, aren't as different as sometimes those arguments become in certain social media capacities.
Yeah. Well, and also people don't realize, like back in the day when we did we would do our scoring chances, we'd go through them as a staff and do them, or I would do them, then we'd go through them. So that was our data. But a lot of the data was just coming off of NHL data, and it was just synced to the video. And so how much do you trust some of that video? Does it make sense? So when they got the some of the programs they have now that were you can't argue the data. It's actually spitting it out. It's non-biased. It's not, Nashville gives up more gives up more shots because their building pushes the button more, that kind of that's actually was conversations back then. Like they want more shots home and away. So, do you really believe in some of these analytics? That was, and I'm not saying that's what we thought, but that's, it was an argument back then. Was the data correct? Now the data's there. There's no denying it. So, like I said, I won't say what's going on in the last 3 years, but at my end of my tenure, it was still a tool, but it was you're right. It's closer. And what we would do is, as a staff, you would break down the game like Gully does and everyone does. You use your eye, and then we go through the analytics as a staff too. And if there was anything that maybe didn't match, we'd go back and relook at it. Like, why doesn't this match? Why did we think we were better, or why did our scoring chances not match what the analytics are saying? And you go through them, and then you go through that plan. But the analytics are so close to as accurate as possible nowadays. They've never been better, but the analytics are so accurate now that you can't deny it. Back then you could kind of argue, well, this doesn't make sense, because they literally, I hate saying this, but some 7-year-old might in the 300 levels pushing a button of where that shot was, doesn't mean. And then also we go look at it and be like, wait a minute, that's not a chance. That was he just pushed the button wrong. Whatever it is. It wouldn't happen all the time. Those guys are really good and appreciate them. But you were making big decisions off of certain analytics that maybe maybe didn't match what actually did happen. Now they do. So it's still a tool. It's closer. You're right. You got to go through the process of a staff breaking down the game. And then you look at the analytics and what's important. The other thing, what's important to you as a team and as a staff, because there's certain analytics that the Dallas Stars probably care about and the Minnesota Wild don't, and vice versa. What makes them successful, what makes the Dallas Stars successful is not the same as what Minnesota Wild makes successful, or even Edmonton. We talked about that. Most teams can't replicate what Edmonton does, but what makes, when Dallas is playing at the top of the game, what are the analytics that matter to them?
On that front, and I'm not going to ask you about Glenn Goldson because they're actively in a playoff series, and obviously you didn't work with Glenn during this, but like when you were working with either some of the other prior coaches, is there any coach that pops in your mind where it was like, hey, when I worked with Pete or I worked with Lindy or even I worked with Rick, this was a stat in an area of focus that he wanted to see, they wanted to see right away? Like, is there anything that pops in your mind for some of those head coaches that really popped for them when you were working with them?
Yeah, I mean, Bones was chances for against high danger. Like, so we'd go through the chances. That was, and the same with Mark Crawford. You can go through. That matters to almost every coach. The one that was always really, really interested me and really good was and kind of what makes him such a good coach. Pete was all about exits. So his almost, I shouldn't say this, but his system was based off of breakouts and exits. So we'd go through the exits and then the forecheck, but mainly the other team's exit. But our exits is what we concentrated on. So exits, he would look at that, as an analytic that would that would lead to the rest of our game. That would read through our speed through neutral zone, so everything started there. I loved working under Pete's system. I love Pete's system. And so actually I'm still I'm teaching the 10 U's how to break out and everything. So we're using that. But I think that was one that we always looked at it, but it was always just a stat. It was always just an analytic that, okay, good. Our breakouts were good last night. And it's important to every coach. I'm not saying it's important, but his was like, that's where everything starts, our breakouts and our exits.
I talked to a player this year on a different team who never played for Pete in the Stars, but he played for Pete in a different team. And that's what he said. The first thing when Pete came to their team and they changed coaches and Pete arrived was, okay, a lot of other stuff we can discuss, but this is how we're breaking out.
This is it. Our breakouts, our exits are who we are. And so that wasn't, like I said, that was a stat that we always had, or analytics that we always had, but it didn't dictate how we played the rest in every zone. And for Pete, that does.
Yeah. Last one for me, and then I think Sean probably has some cool stuff to wrap up with. But I'm trying to remember. I'm sure this is written somewhere. But do you remember what your streak was when the challenge came in? Because this is when your name started becoming a household name for Stars fans. I think is because you would.
My name became a household name because of my wife. That was because of Julie.
Well, that's the second part of my question. But I'm curious if you remember what that streak was, because you had some. I want to say it was like 6 or 7 straight successful challenges. It might have been more.
I don't know about I don't know about a streak. I can't remember a streak, but
you're going to be modest. Okay.
No, or I'm just going to be old and don't remember. One of those two.
That's the great thing about getting old. You can claim the one as the other.
Yeah. I did know, because I tracked it. We tracked it, and I had the best. During my run. I had the number one. I had the best percentage. I can't remember what it was, but it always came up in conversations when I was doing contract talks at every 2 or 3 years, whatever it was. But I knew I had a good number that way. I don't know about a streak. And if it ever got broken, it was because of Monty or Lindy.
It was there. They just needed a timeout.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that leads. I'm glad you mentioned Julie, because once your name started becoming a household name too, obviously hers was and still is, I think, for a lot of fans. What was the conversation like with you guys when you decided to step away? Because I'm sure that's hard. Anyone who steps away from the game, that's tough. And I'm not asking you to speak for her and her decision, but just for you, what was that conversation like as a family when you made that decision to step away, and how tough was it?
Yeah, it was really tough, because we were talking about it last night, because I think and I was doing it for quite a while at the end, where I was still 100% in and all into the job and everything, but it was kind of one of those, maybe this is the year, and then we talk about it, right? And we were joking about it the last 3-4 years, like I could have gone every single year for the last 3. I mean, the Dallas Stars have been better every year and that's how tough it is, because I could have made not excuse, but I could have made the argument that just this is the year we're going to win the Stanley Cup this year, and then maybe I'll move on, and then also my kids are in college, and what happened to coaching 10U. So it was a conversation that lasted. I knew basically that my final year, that it was probably my last year. I didn't make the 100% decision until the end, but we had talked and discussed it, how hard it was on the family. And listen, every family situation is different, and every every family, every job, everything's different. So I'm not going to, people, it's amazing what some families are able to do and still able to do it. But for us, it just, my kids needed a little more time, which was special and great. And I loved it. It just didn't make sense for us anymore. Maybe if I played in the league for 15 years and I was making $5 to $8 million a year or whatever it was, and then maybe Julie would have been a little bit fine with it. But it just, for our situation, it was building. It had been building maybe since even COVID. That was, I really appreciated going to the bubble and what our run in that team and everything we did there. But that was hard on families. And
2 months.
So, yeah. So it was, it probably started there, and the next year was really tough because we'd go away and, we'd be stuck in hotels or whatever it was. So I think it was a process of making the decision with her, and what was best for our family. And, when I got to the end of the year, it was apparent that it was time for me to become the 10U coach.
So right now you're coaching the 10U team. You get to watch a Stars game with a beer in your hand and everything like that. Is there anything being able to sit back now that you found that you've been able to enjoy about the game that maybe you missed? Like, because when you're a coach, right, you're worried about, hey, was that entry on or off, or you're worried about this? Like, is there anything besides not the stress, besides the stress, is there anything about the game that now you get to sit back and watch as someone who's played the game their whole life that you've gotten to either fall in love with again or re-enjoy, that it's no longer the job?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think so. And what I mean by that is I still watch the game the same way.
Yeah.
My eye is trained. I can enjoy the actual flow of the game. I still see structure and why things are happening, what's going on here, what Minnesota's doing to Dallas versus what and that's actually, that's my favorite part of the game. I love that side of the game. So I still watch the game that way. Again, it's the thing is, I don't think people realize how fast it is until you're there at the ice. I mean, we talked about being 1,200 games or whatever, sitting and watching a room, and I was in an office 30 feet from the bench, but I was still watching on TV. And you don't realize how fast it is. And so it's been enjoyable seeing the speed of the game again. Like, I didn't get to watch the speed of the game and how good they are and how quick they are and how big and physical, just everything why we love hockey, why it makes it's the best sport in the world, because of the speed and skill and creativity and how they do it at that, how they make plays and how smart they are in those situations. I always joke, like, I pause and rewind and frame by frame, and I could make a decision of why Mikko Rantanen should have done that. Well, try doing that at that speed that they're doing it at. So I appreciate the speed and skill of the game that it's at, but I still watch the game the same way. I see it from a structure macro level than I do at a micro or individual level.
And is it, do you think it's, you mentioned trying to bring the breakouts to the 10U team, and we say it in joking, but I'm serious about it. Like, when you talk about just working with the kids and kind of getting to see the game, because it's the same sport, obviously not nearly the same speed, but like when you kind of get to go behind the bench with the kids and kind of see them living the game firsthand now, like, what's that been kind of like with that kind of experience in the back of your mind?
Yeah, you know what? So my first practice when I was coaching, I remember I had all these plans and goals, and I saw this going a different way. And I got to practice and I realized that it wasn't going to go that way. That the most important thing for me is to promote the love of the game and why it's such the best game in the world, because of the teamwork and what it takes, cheering for your team. And so I realized pretty quick, I had all this structure stuff, he's 10U, so he's, it's not quite there. I think maybe we'll get there in the future when I can bring all this structure and knowledge I had, but maybe the game's going to be changed by then. So maybe all my old man knowledge won't matter when we get to 13, 14, 15, 16, whatever it is. But I realized pretty quick that I needed to push the love of the game. And I think that's what, that's why Rick Bowness is still having success, as a coach, and why he did so well in Winnipeg after us is because you can feel that love for the game. And that's kind of why we all got into it. And we kind of forget it, or maybe not forget it, but it kind of, gets pushed aside because it is such a, there's so many important moments, and I get that side of thing. But, I've enjoyed being the 10U coach because I see the love of the game and what it does in that locker room, and the kids on the ice and how excited they are when they make a play or get off the ice. I probably see the game differently than when I was a player, because I think my Ryder's a pretty good player. He's scored quite a few goals this year, and my favorite play so far this year, and Julie put it on video, was he had a back check where he chased down their best skater and broke up a play like 200 feet, went end to end. And I was like, that's my favorite play of the whole year. And that's probably the coach in me, but I don't know. It's fun that way. That's
how you can tell an NHL coach if the first
thing I didn't think back checks. I didn't think I was going to be like that, but I am. It was it's my favorite. It's my favorite play he did all year. So he's a worker, man. So it's good.
Kelly, thanks for doing this. I mean, we could talk to you for a long time, especially that era of Stars hockey in particular is near and dear to my heart for a lot of reasons. But man, I gotta say, I commend you for your choice. I've yet to talk to any like 90-year-olds who say that they regret spending more time with their kids when they were growing up. So good on you for making that tough choice. And thanks for coming on doing this, and don't be a stranger.
Definitely. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Sean. Talk to you guys soon.
Thanks for that, Kelly. Always fun. Thank you again so much.
Bye.
All right, there he goes. Thanks to Kelly for jumping on. As he said, the second best part of the Julie and Dobbs Kelly Forbes duo. Oh man, that's some really great stuff though. Honestly, and I will say the back check thing. I know I'm getting older because it's kind of starting to appeal to me a little bit too. Like Jason Robertson's had a couple plays this year, and I'm like, I have to grab that highlight and save it because that's such a cool play when he scores 45 goals, and you're like, yeah, cool.
You know you're old when you get excited about the fundamentals of the you get excited about the fundamentals of the route a guy takes from the blue line to the net front, and it's definitely it's a sign, Robert. It's
I've been tempted a couple times to make like a bingo card for a post-game presser, and like, okay, Matt Duchene did this and created these goals, but he swept that puck off the goal line because he skated hard to get back. That's going to be the first thing the coach mentions, and have a bingo card of all the things the coach mentioned instead of the, high skill plays or whatever. And honestly, you could probably make a pretty good game out of it.
Yeah. And I think one of the really cool things about Kelly, and I hope people took it away from that conversation. And he's someone who, we got a lot of guests that I want to get through on this show, but he's someone who will probably go on to the ideally someday repeat guest conversation as well. But one of the things I always really enjoyed about Kelly, when I covered the Stars on a beat basis and it was there daily and everything, was he was really good about he wouldn't give away state secrets or anything like that, but he was good about helping explain and teach and understand why something might happen, right? Like, and it was, you had to come with your own knowledge, right? Like you had to prove you knew what you were talking about, but
do the prep and do the work.
But there was, if you did your homework and you did and you were curious, of like, okay, like I think a good example is one of the things about Stars face-offs that I've always found fascinating. And obviously Kelly had a part in this, but there's a big Stars face-off history, etymology, or whatever we want to use, back to the Rich Peverley trade. Okay, so the Rich Peverley trade, and it's if you think about a lot of the ways the Stars are really good on faceoffs, and it's Artu Huru's is a little bit different now, but it is there's kind of that, you would see a lot of that drop to one knee play, and that goes back to Rich Peverley won a ton of draws that way in Boston, taught the move to Tyler Seguin, and then Rich went in. And then Tyler taught that to a bunch of other young Stars centers. And it's just like for a decade and a half, Stars faceoffs all looked very similar in the way guys approached it. So it was, I always appreciate, I would talk to Kelly about that. So very excited actually now to bring our next guest in. We're going for the first time. We are going international. We are, I guess first time European international. We've been to Canada on the show, but so first time we're.
That's true.
First time. I mean, even though Canada is technically south of me and Windsor is technically south of Detroit, so it's fine. We are going to. I had him send me the audio pronunciation of his name, so I'm going to hope I do it right, and he can correct me when I botch it here. But we're gonna bring in. We're gonna bring in.
You just check something. He's cheating. He's going off a cheat sheet.
I think we just heard that lawnmower for the first time, Robert.
Oh, there you go.
We're gonna bring in. I believe it's pronounced. Florian Wieser. I believe I'm doing it right, and we're bringing him in. Obviously. If you've ever listened to our pal Gavin Spittle show, he's talked about Florian before. And Florian, thanks for joining us. Florian, you are just wrapped up. What is it? Year 17 or 14 or 15 playing in Italy, and Stars fan over there. But more importantly, I think a 6 or 7 time Italian champion. So thanks for joining us.
Hi, Sean. Hi, Robert.
Good to see you, Florian. Did I hear correctly with Gavin that you win the double this year?
Yes, I did. And I played the last game of the career, so the good way to end the career this way.
Did that make the decision easier for you, like going out on a high note like that?
No, the decision was already made before. So no, but it of course, like if you win, it feels better, and you can leave on a good way.
Like, so for those who don't know, so you kind of, if you ever want to go and take a look at Florian's elite prospects pages, I'm looking at right now. I mean, even this being last year, you'd see 49 points in 32 regular season games, 18 points in 13 games, obviously in 18 playoff games, still have it there. And you and I spoke kind of heading into the Olympic. You played in the Italian Cup that was played in the Olympic venue before. And so that was a great chance for you and I to chat in person or on the phone for the first time about Italian hockey. And I kind of wanted to just open that because I think Italian hockey got a little bit more of the widespread view this year because of the Olympics and obviously some of the discourse around what happened with the arena venue. But as someone who's lived and breathed it for 20 years, close to 20 years on the professional level and even longer growing up, when you look I wanted to kind of let you be our tour guide into Italian hockey, where it sits in the culture and as it's kind of grown as you kind of have watched it.
Oh, that could be a long discussion or a long monologue or short one. Like Italian hockey has many problems, like a lot of problems, of course. It's not a national sport. It's played in the small villages in the Alps. Like we had the chance with the 2006 Olympics in Torino. Like there was a lot of money going around, but the federation wasn't able to bring the sport in the big cities like Milan, like Torino, like even Verona, Rome. Like that's the biggest problem. Like the game here is played in the smaller towns, smaller villages in the Alps, where's also the sport number one. Like there are many places where it's the most popular sport, but you can't have this many ice sheets and players if you don't bring the sport to the big cities, and that's the biggest problem. In the past, Italy was always like a country that was going between the A group and the B group, and we were always a little bit cheating with all the Italo-Canadians. Like some people maybe remembers, like there were teams with full of Italo-Canadians. Like we locals, we are not so happy about that because that takes chances away. On the other side, you have a competitive team, but that's it's not an easy decision like to make. Like if you play only with the homegrown players, that would be, if you ask me, the better road. but it takes time. It takes time to develop, and that's the biggest problem. Like the decision makers, they don't have the patience, and especially with 2006 Torino and now 2026 Milan, they always had the pressure to bring those Italos to have at least a competitive team that's not losing 10, 15, 12. So short version.
I'm curious, and if this is too sensitive of a topic, you can recuse yourself and not answer. But what did you think of? I thought the Italian team at this year's Olympics actually had some pretty outstanding moments. Obviously, like you mentioned, there's a little bit of a competitive imbalance, but especially the goaltending. But they had a couple other moments I thought in the group stage where they actually looked, I thought, surprisingly competitive based on what the narrative kind of was about that team in the media. But I suspect you have a little bit more thoughts about them than I do.
I'm a big believer that if you go down to after the first 8, 10 teams, 10 nations, the margins are rather slim. Like between Austria, Slovenia, Italy, Hungary, those teams, the difference is that they are not that big. And we fortunate, like we have the Red Bull Academy in Salzburg. We have Switzerland is close, so the really good young players that also played in the Olympics, they have the opportunity to go there and to learn the game or improve there, and that helps a lot. Also the local hockey. No, I was rather surprised how they did in the Olympics. Like with Jalonen, like he's a good coach. Like he's a really good coach. I made now the coach license in Italy, and
So you're going to be coaching in 4 years, is what you're telling us. The next year.
No, I will start next year as a coach of a junior team here, local junior team. But like he made a presentation there, and he has aura, like he like when he stands in front of you, like you listen, like he's a guy, like he knows what he's doing. He has the experience, and I think like he's a guy. Hopefully he can stay also after the World Championships now. But I also think that he costs a little bit, and now we need to see how much money is left after Olympics. So that's always the questions here.
What was you and I spoke on the phone right before when you had played in the Italian Cup. You guys won in the Italian Cup in that venue. What was kind of, as someone who had boots on the ground, as someone who kind of saw it, and obviously the entire world had oh my God, this rink is, if you read some of the stories and tweets and messages about it from some of the outside world, you would have thought that all of a sudden they were putting a rink on Mars and didn't know what they were doing. So like, what was kind of, as someone who actually played on that ice, and as someone who I know we were adamant about making sure, hey, people understand what actually happened there. Like, what was kind of take me through that thought process there when you got to play on that ice, and then you see some of the way this kind of got bloated and the story kind of blew up before, and then hey, they played all the games and medals were handed out and no one fell into a lake. So
it's like it was clear to everybody that it will end like this. It was the same in Torino 2006. The rink will be finished in the last second, and some things will not be done. But the Italians somehow they will make it work, and because they have some pride, they will present themselves like for the world. But the process to get there, that's always there are some complications, but we were pretty sure that it will get done. The ice when we played there, like I already said, like the ice was good. The ice was never a problem, and in the end, I think nothing happened. Of course, injuries happened, but that was not the ice or the rink or anything. The reason for that. So in the end, everything went good.
You mentioned Jukka Jalonen. I believe Sean mentioned that you've played for a lot of different coaches yourself in your long hockey career. So I'm curious what you've noticed about the different coaches, because I'm sure Jalonen isn't the only import, non-Italian coach to come in and coach on teams that you've played for. Do you notice differences from, a coach from Finland or a coach from North America or a coach from Italy? Like, are there different themes from coaches from different parts of the world?
I need to start to answer this question. I need to start from another angle. Like, I was always the guy who was saying, like, yeah, smaller sheet, bigger sheet, yeah, blah blah blah. That's not a big difference. It's still hockey. And then when I stepped on that ice in Milan the first time I played on the smaller sheet, I was what the. It was like, like. I like
There's no room
like
out here. Yeah.
there's no room out there. Like, you have your warm up routine, like doing the circles, and I was standing in the corner where I normally would stand in front of the net. Like after 20 years of playing. So, and the game is different. It's a totally different game, and that also changes now. Coming back to your question with the coaches, like North American coaches, like I think two really good coaches from North America, Stan Moore. Like he was coaching many universities in USA, like Colgate, and Michael Cameron. He was also really good. AHL, East Coast, everywhere a little bit. And the approach they had was totally different. Like the European coaches, they were much more like passing, skating, keeping the puck, keeping possession. And then the North American coach came here and it was like, go to the net, cycle around, shoot, go to the rebound, box out, box in. Like, it was like, it's different. And now I want to make the full circle. Playing out that small sheet, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense.
I've tried to explain to people before in previous years when they had the different dimensions for Olympic hockey on international size rinks versus the smaller North American rink that you see it in a lot of places, power plays, especially. There's just more time and space to develop and get speed and curl up and kind of even reloads and stuff like that. And now that that's maybe disappearing from international competition as they standardize more and more to the North American size rink, I wonder if we're going to see maybe some new strategies as those two sides start to merge a little bit more, perhaps, where, sure, like you said, the space dictates certain, you have to be quicker and you can't allow for as much puck possession at times when you don't have as much space. But I wonder if we'll see maybe a meld of the two styles over time as we get more of that sort of, for lack of a better term, European kind of approach on North American size ice. At least that's my hope, because it feels like a lot of things never change in the NHL. And I'd love to see things start to change over time.
You can hope for, but I honestly don't believe in that, because there isn't enough time. If you watch the playoffs now, like there is a certain way you have to play, and there's non-negotiables. Like, and even if the discussions were before, like European coaches coming over to the NHL, like now I'm more skeptical about that, because the game is different. And and if you learn that game from as a coach for 10, 20, 30 years, I think those guys, they are not stupid. They know what they are doing. So if there would be another angle or another option, I think they would explore that, but they know that it's not so easy.
That's a great segue, talking about watching the NHL playoffs. As someone, and one of the ways that you and I connected was your Stars fandom, right? Like, that's kind of how you and I connected through this internet world, and I guess how we're here right now having this conversation, fun small world thing. I know you've told me before, but for you, when you're growing up, you're into hockey, you're in Italy. It's not obviously the biggest sport for the population there. So I know you've told me, but I want you to share with this audience, how did you kind of find the NHL, and how come Dallas became the team for you? Because I know a bit of the story, but I want to share it because I think it's a fun shared experience for a lot of people here.
Yeah. Growing up, I started playing hockey with my cousin and neighbor, and he played goalie. So my cousin's name was Dominic, And everybody in the hockey world knows another Dominik Hasek. He played goalie too. So Dominik Hasek was his idol. So, and with being my cousin and neighbor, he played goalie, I played forward. We had a little bit of competition going on, scoring on him, and in 1999, the Dallas Stars beat the Buffalo Sabres. So I had the obligation to become a Stars fan because, just to chirp on him. And same time, like Hasek was his idol, and so Mike Modano as a center. I play center. He became my idol.
I think there's go ahead,
ahead.
Robert. And I think there's the element of, I think you and I also talked about the element too of when you're getting the games over there too, right? Like it's not super, I believe, obviously now it's much easier with what technology is. It's you kind of took them where you got them, right? And I think there's also, I remember you also telling me there's a bit of a video game element too of just being able to play the hockey video games with the Stars too, right?
Yeah. Like we had like to check the results. It was the teletext. I don't know if you guys know what that is. Like when you check on the TV the results. And the EA Sports games, like that's where we connected. Like everybody in the team had those games, and we played on that. Stars had a great team, like Modano 92 rating, Zubov, Balfour. Like that was a team you choose. Like, and yeah, so it was easily to choose the Stars.
My memory of playing those games, but the really old ones, I guess, like 94 or 95, the old EA Sports games, was the checking from behind penalty, where you would actually trigger it in the game. And I have still, I don't think, ever seen it called in the NHL. It's either boarding or interference or roughing or charging, but you do not ever see that. And I felt like my brother and I, when we were playing that as kids, we were always getting checking from behind penalties on EA Sports.
Those games were fun, like the fighting and everything, hitting hip checks and broken glasses. Like,
so do you now? What's your kind of viewing of the NHL playoffs now? Are you watching? Are you staying up to watch them live? Do you watch them on replay? How do you view them now? Because now on top of that, I know you got your own family too, so you've got responsibilities as a parent as well. So what's your viewing habit like for these playoffs now?
Yeah, so like yesterday, like today, I'm a little bit tired because yesterday I had to watch the Champions League game, PSG Bayern. That was an epic game as a as a football watcher. So I got to bed late and I had to wake up in the night to watch the Stars game. Obviously, those 2 a.m. games for us, they're not easy. So if you are lamenting about those late starts, we are happy about those. Like we are really happy about those.
I'm glad somebody is happy about them.
Yeah. Like because that's much easier to watch because then you go to sleep. You wake up at 4:30 in the morning. You watch the first period like on replay, and then you're live for the second period. So that's my routine normally because with the periods and those commercial breaks, that takes a lot of time where nothing happens. So normally I skip the first period and wake up for the second period, and late starts are perfect.
Well, watching Champions League games sometimes requires the same thing for us over in North America because Sean and I are both pretty big football, soccer fans. So there are times where we've had to, get up really early to watch a 6 a.m. game or something on a Saturday, for instance. For us.
I'm not sure if Sean is still a Spurs fan.
Me and Nils Lundqvist and I can share that misery beyond the obviously other miseries that Nils is obviously dealing with right now, and that with the injury wise. So yeah, that is not that's not a fun subject right now.
Hey, Sean, Arsenal are up 1-0 right now in their Champions League game. I'm not sure what Tottenham's doing in their Champions League game right now. I can't find the score for Spurs Champions League. I'm sure it's there somewhere.
I'm sure at some point in the next 7 to 8 years there'll be one again. with Florian, when I told you I wanted to go down this path, because it's funny, you have, I believe, if I did my research right, you shared the ice with one of the guys in this Dallas, Minnesota series during the under 20 World Championships. This would have been I think it was technically the D1 World Junior under 20s. This would have been the 2006-7 one. I think that was the year. Yeah. And Matt Zuccarello obviously plays for Norway, and now he plays for Minnesota and is an opponent for Dallas in this series. I don't know if it was only one game for you, but I wonder if you have any recollection of remember playing against the short Norwegian kid that is now in the NHL for 20 years later.
Honestly, no. No. But now, I can proudly say I played against Matt Zuccarello. Like, I played against other NHLers, career AHLers. Like, those are things you like as a semi-professional most of the times. Like, you're proud of that. Like, I played against some really, really good players, and Matt Zuccarello, even if I don't remember it, like he's probably the best one.
What was it for you as someone who obviously soccer, football is the big sport there, but when you get that opportunity in any sport to pull on an Italy jersey, what was that like when you kind of think about just in any sport? There's got to be something kind of cool to know, no matter what the age group is, no matter what it is. When you think back of that, to be, I'm part of a select 20 to 25 people that are the best at this in a certain age group or category, where I get to represent my country. What was that like?
Yeah, of course, that's always the biggest honor you can have, especially that year, because like that was I skipped 2 years. So I'm being from 89. I went that championship with the 87ers. So I didn't have the chance to play the under 20 world championship with my group because of injuries. So that was another good experience, because like we had a good group with the under 18, my age group. Like we had a really good group. And yeah, but of course that's always the biggest honor you can have, like playing for the country.
You looking at your stats, you know how to score as a hockey player, which is the hardest thing to do, right? That's what most players will tell you. Defense, coaches love defense, but offense is very tough to create. Did you have to change your game? Not that you're old, we're all old here, I guess, compared to 22-year-olds or whatever, but did you have to change your game to continue producing offense the way you did later in your career, the way we see players do it in leagues in North America? Or were you just that good, Florian, that you could do the same thing at 23 that you did in your 30s?
No. That's a great question. That's a great question, Robert. Like, because like I always like if in Italy the ex Serie A league, that was a really good league that was on par with the first league in Germany. So in those leagues, like I was a third liner, best case second liner. But I also played in the second leagues where I was played as a scorer. But of course, like when you get older, it's not so easy to keep that speed and everything. And I changed my game to a little bit to a Pavelski light. So net front guy, a lot of tipping, a lot of rebounds, going to the dirty areas, and I watched a lot of Pavelski. Honestly, like I tried to, like, he was in this way. He was a player I watched a lot. And he helped me in some ways to be this productive in the later years.
This is perfect timing.
Oh, go ahead, Sean.
This is perfect timing on something, because now this part isn't going to be great for those listening on the audio platform, but I do have a bit of a surprise here for this. So I'm going to, I went and did some research here, and I'm going to see if I make this right. I believe I can. I pulled some highlights here, Florian, and I was able to pull. I was able to get a couple of goals and assists from this year, I believe. There's about a minute here, so for those listening to the audio platform, we're watching a couple of nice little backdoor.
Oh, look at that backdoor! Ready to set his blade available for the pass
to set up there, and some work on the power play, and it's so I
Well,
wanted
stepped
to
into it. Look at that. Stepped in from
well-
the circle and wired it.
I made the pass there.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's the
you
pass.
were the assist
That's the
there. Okay,
pass.
sorry.
I think
sorry.
this is a goal for you here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good passing. I mean, great shot too, obviously.
Yes.
But the
Yeah,
pass
thanks,
was-
And I think my favorite one is this one here. You said you had to slow it down, but you got up on the rush there, and you're scoring, and you're setting up setting stuff back up on the 2-on-1. So I wanted to make sure we brought brought some of the highlights in for the people watching on the video platform. So if you're in the audio section, go check the video portion out of this to see that. But I wanted to pull that in there and appreciate your game a bit here.
Really, thank you. Like that takes a lot of work, like to find those. Like really, thank you, Sean. Like I feel honored.
I will say it was not easy finding many Italian highlights. So I was credit to the credit to I work with some people at Elite Prospects who know how to pull some strings on video platforms. So I was able to get a couple there. So
Well, Sean, now my question is, you're a goalie. Would you have stopped all those as a goalie?
No, I'm not going down. No, we're not going down that.
I don't. Frankly, for all those who watch the video, you can agree.
We're not getting into. We joked before the start of the show, Robert, about at some point we'll have super chats. I think at some point the Sean making fun of his beer league stance and format can be rewarded for that if we ever do that. But
if you had stopped that 2-on-1 with both passes getting across,
I don't think I'm able to.
The goaltender was almost backwards.
I don't think that's there. I don't think the hips aren't there for me on that anymore. Florian, before I wanted to let you go on this, and I wanted to kind of bring, as someone who is waking up, putting in the dedication and dealing with some of the sleep deprivation to watch this series, you're watching a Stars team that unfortunately hasn't been scoring very much at 5-on-5. When you're watching the game and you're kind of, as someone who plays it regularly, are you watching it more as a fanatical fan, someone who's kind of yelling a little bit? Are you watching a little bit more for the little X's and O's? How are you watching the game? And is there any risk of waking the rest of the family up as when they're failing to get chances going at even strength?
Yeah, normally I'm more the X's and O's guys. Like I obviously, like I'm starting to get into coaching. Like I watch a lot for that, but now in the playoffs, of course, there is not screaming, but there are some emotional outbreaks. This night, like I wasn't this emotional because also the team wasn't that emotional. So like it was hard to get emotional for anything. It was more like, what the are you doing tonight? Like,
well, what about you? Now that you're going into coaching, you experienced, I'm sure, different kinds of coaches as a player. Do you have in your mind the type of coach you want to be? And do you think you'll be able to be? Because I'm sure most players would say, I don't want to be that coach that's always yelling at players or whatever. But can you already tell maybe what sort of coach you're going to be? Or are you going to find that out as you go along?
I of course I will find out, but I think I'm a big believer, like the yelling thing, that being hard on guys, that's not working these days. Like the new generation, they are not reacting to that anymore. They would maybe react for that maybe for 2 to 3 months, or maybe 2-3 times. But if you want to be successful, like for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, like you need, I think in the modern area, you need to be a good communicator. Like that's the biggest skill as a coach that you need to have.
Thanks for that, Florian. I mean, we could talk to you for a long time, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again. I've personally, before I hand it back to Sean, I'll just say that I've really enjoyed hearing from you and your perspective and the ways that our paths have crossed and everything. And we really appreciate you popping on and doing this at, I'm sure, an inconvenient time for you over in Italy. So thanks very much for taking the time to do this for us today.
My last one before I let you go is, I look at, you win the Italian Cup, you win the league this year. You win both. Is there And I think if I've looked up correctly, I think you've won 6 or 7 championships over in Italy. 6. Is that a level where there are rings? Do you have like how do you kind of keep like I'm just kind of curious.
Are there medals or rings or some commemorative?
Is there like, do you have like the trophy case? Is there a trophy case set up in the house? Like how do you have this there where your kids will look and remember, hey, you know what? Dad was pretty damn good at this.
There are medals, like there are not rings, like, but there are medals. Like a little fun story, like I always said after last year that I would end my career after the 5th one. So because I would then I would hold the record for most championships. But then my teammates, they came to me and they said, but wait, like all the greats have 6, like Tom Brady, Mark Messier, Michael Jordan, they all have 6, like you can't stop with 5. So yeah, now I'm here with 6, so now I can stop, but not comparing me to any of those guys.
You got bullied into being Michael Jordan. Yeah,
it's just a funny story why, like one of the reasons why I continued. Of course, if you hear something like if the teammates you played with and they do try everything to convince you to keep going, so that's really nice. And yeah,
well, we really appreciate you coming on here. We definitely appreciate the time. I appreciate I've spoken with you about Italian hockey earlier in the year. I know it's been fun for me. One of the ideas of building this show with Robert has been to kind of bring some fun world hockey perspectives in. So I really appreciate you being part of that for us. And it's kind of cool to put a name and face and audio to it, because obviously you and I have messaged back and forth for a couple of years before. So again, thank you so much and congrats on the great career. And if you do come back to try to win number 7, I guess that means you also have to come back on the show too. So
thank you guys. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Robert, for the invitation. Keep the good work going.
Yeah. Thanks, Florian.
Good luck.
Thank you, Florian.
There he goes. Thanks to Florian Wieser for popping on, giving us a little bit of enlightenment from Europe as opposed to our insular North American.
Yes, it's we've gone fully international, Robert. With we've gone to Europe. This was definitely a good opening for now. If you happen to be after 10 p.m. in Europe and watching live, you too can be our subject to potential. Yes, hockey. You are potentially on our radar to come onto the show. I will.
So somewhere Nathan Walker's brother is just thinking, oh, this is great for me in Australia. This is awesome. Yeah,
I will say, like, we don't like to tease. We don't like to overpromise guests, but I did exchange messages today with a former Stars player who happens to work high up in Hockey Finland about potentially coming on at some point, and he said at some point in the summer. So we are hopeful that this is opening the door for working with time zones, because that works well. I really loved that. I really loved that meeting. I wrote heading into the Olympics. I wrote kind of about the venue, having spoken with Florian about it. And I really loved his perspective as someone who actually played on the ice, right? Because I think that whole Olympic saga of the rink size, well, there's parts of it that were embarrassing, right? For how it all came together. I think it was always a little bit media overblown too, especially when you think about the fact that Doug Armstrong said back in August that, hey, this is what the actual size of the ice is going to be. So I really appreciate his perspective on there, especially as someone who actually played on it. The other thing I really enjoyed about kind of the ideology of it is I like when someone comes on and they're willing to kind of talk about how perspectives change, right? Like I really enjoy the moment where someone can say, you know what, I looked at things a little bit differently when the ice surface changed. And I love that kind of perspective of how it comes together here.
Well, and especially as someone who, I mean, it's easy for us to kind of theorize when, Jukka Jalonen and coaches like that, over the summer, you have coaching changes and you talk about all these potential candidates and, hey, are they a wild card or something for this job? And then we try to theorize from our perspective about, but these would be the struggles in adapting, to actually talk to someone who has experienced it firsthand and seen what that's like, and then made that adaptation the other way. I think it carries a lot more weight than just me sitting in an armchair trying to speculate about it. So I really appreciate him talking about that. And it does make me, well, it makes me think that that is a real adjustment. It also makes me preemptively impressed at whichever coach shows that they can make that adjustment whenever they do come to the NHL, whether it's Yolonen or someone is one of the many other coaches, especially a couple Finnish coaches that have been out there.
Yeah, and obviously, like Marco Sturm is coaching the Bruins right now, right? And he's someone who is a European coach, played in the NHL, and he kind of, you look at his path, right? Like he coached the German national team for, I believe it was 3 or 4 years, and I know I've spoken to both Leon Draisaitl and Moritz Seider about how he played such a huge role in elevating German hockey as the head coach of that program, led him to a silver medal at the Olympics. But he kind of went through the assistant coach, was an assistant coach in LA for 3 or 4 years, then the head coach for the Ontario Reign for a couple of years. I wonder, and this is one of those just coaching elements, and this is, I don't have any perfect insight into this, but I just kind of throw this to you and you think about it, it's hard to, and as much as you might love the bus league, as much as it's not as glamorous to go from coaching in Zurich or Switzerland or coaching in Finland, and you've been over there, Robert, to riding the bus to get that North American experience from Des Moines, Iowa to Rockford on a Tuesday in February.
Could you wait, what's your question here? What's your question? There's a leaf blower outside, so I was preemptively trying to apologize.
Yeah, no. My point is, when you kind of look at the jump for some European coaches and kind of the ability, there's that sacrifice to get that North American experience that
got it.
Isn't, just pretty bluntly, isn't nearly as exciting as the lifestyle wise as some of the European coaching opportunities are.
Yeah, and that's where you get into like the pay your dues sort of thing that can cut both ways. Like it's true. Like when you come from outside of any system into any system, there's always going to be a little bit higher of a threshold to prove that you belong there. That doesn't mean that's good or right, but that's a reality of a lot of whether it's sports or anything, right? That's just something that tends to be latent unless it's very heavily kind of worked on to prevent that sort of bias, I guess, is a kind way of saying it. So yeah, we've seen coaches who do that, and they're willing to, this is my goal, I'm going to work my way up. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and they get stuck. And you wonder, this happens with players at the end of their career, right? They try to hang on and they hope that they'll get another NHL shot, but they wind up in the AHL riding those buses and stuff, like you said. And other players, once they think, if I don't have a guaranteed NHL shot, going to go over the Swiss League, make some good money. I know I'll still be playing for like the highest level over there. It's at least an approximation of the lifestyle I'm living right now. And I'd rather do that than even try to do that. And yeah, that means I'm probably done in the NHL, but I'd rather just have that. And I don't begrudge coaches who make the same choice either and say, as much as it'd be fun to jump over and try to make the NHL, it might not be worth it in a certain situation to make that track. I mean, like Kelly was talking about earlier, it's a big sacrifice. And he was talking about being at the NHL level. Imagine what that sacrifice is like, being any kind of coach down at the lower levels. I don't even want to imagine what a video coach in the Western League, what you're dealing with when you're going from like Red Deer to Saskatoon. Like that can't be a super luxurious trip, I'm imagining, even though I'm sure it's nicer than, a lot of other junior teams.
Well, there's a reason the WHL recently put the rule in play where they're allowing a couple plane trips in the season, right? Like there's a reason that's come into play, because the WHL and junior hockey, and this is a fascinating topic, and I'd love to actually get some more people on to talk about this subject as the evolution of things goes. But like it's why so many guys are leaving the seat. It's why the college route is going to be so looks so luxurious to some CHL guys, where, and I don't like saying it's not necessarily, this isn't comparing the hockey, but there's the level of, if you're playing at a Big Ten school, you're playing like Gavin McKenna went from Penn State is flying a lot of places, right? You're flying to play Friday, Saturday, as opposed to when you're in Medicine Hat, you're hitting the bus and you're sleeping, you're learning to sleep on buses and everything like that. And that's an element of the sport that's going to be kind of part of the recruiting pitch as things go on this. And it's I spoke to Will Morlock, who's the head of strength and conditioning at Michigan State, for a story the other day. And he worked really closely with Porter Martone, who's obviously having a pretty good playoff debut for the Philadelphia for the Flyers.
Not too bad. Not too
exactly.
bad.
And speaking to Will, there was a lot of just about how the college hockey atmosphere has become more and more of how can we be these curated places to help players take the next step in their development and everything like that. And it's not that junior teams aren't doing that. There's just different pathways of where this is all going. Robert,
and even in college, the transfer portal, to put a bow on this, Artem Schlane, who scored a goal last night for Texas in their opening their Game 1 win in the Calder Cup playoffs. He's someone who played for 3 different schools. So he came over from Russia kind of with an eye on the college path, playing, kind of academy hockey early and then eventually for a couple of different schools. And now he's playing pro hockey in the AHL, 1 league away from the NHL. And that was the path that worked for him. It wasn't, glamorous or not, certainly I think the college route is going to only have more appeal as time goes on, especially with NIL and stuff for those people who are able to take advantage of that. And it makes a lot of sense. Whether it's good or bad, it's probably a whole other show in and of itself, though.
I want to end the show today, and I'm going to spring something on you because I did not prep you for it on purpose. I'm going to end this show by springing something. I don't have highlights of you scoring goals in Italy.
You wouldn't have highlights of me scoring just about anywhere except the rink out in Riverside, California, 10 years ago.
Nothing like that. But one thing I wanted to bring I wanted to ask you about, because I think it's a fascinating space where I've worked a lot in the independent hockey media space myself, and I've seen it up close myself in many ways. But you've had you've dove further into this, and obviously for many people watching this show or listening, and for some other people as well, hopefully there is another playoff game hopefully the Dallas Stars are playing for past Saturday for some people who watch the show or read your wonderful site, Stars Thoughts. I kind of I'm pivoting into you on purpose on this, you kind of have learned the independent media lessons. You've seen how you're treated. You've seen how kind of the back end of it. We don't have to go too far into that. I wanted to kind of throw to you here of lessons from this season, lessons from kind of figuring out the space in the hockey media world as you kind of delve into it, because it is a bit scary. Because I think you've done a great job, and I'm intentionally patting your back as I ask you this question of what have you kind of learned about it, and what are some things that you're really taking forward into, there's another game tomorrow night, into next season. I wanted to throw it to you, and I intentionally didn't prep you. This was intentional.
I'll say, well, likewise. I mean, obviously we've talked a lot, it's not going to surprise anyone that I have a lot of goodwill towards you, Sean, personally for this. So I'm not going to let you give me some credit without handing some of it back. But just to avoid turning this into just an applause fest for each other, I'll say that a couple of things that especially the second year, I think like at any job, I always say, no matter what job I've had, the second year tends to be almost a different job than the first year, because you're doing almost everything for the first time in the first year. Even if, after a couple months you get the ropes, it's still going through about a year of almost any job is the time it takes to kind of encounter most of the stuff you're likely to encounter. So for me, having gone through it just about a second season, however long the playoff run lasts for the Stars, honestly, the thing I keep learning over and over is that you have choices all the time of how hard you're going to work and how hard you're going to dig and how patient you're going to be. And sometimes the hardest thing is to be patient. Other times the hardest thing is to say, you know what? No, I do want to follow up, or I do want to devote another hour or make the drive out here, or follow up and make this phone call, or go introduce myself to this person. Or maybe I was in a group chatting with people, but I want to be a little bit awkward and just make sure that I introduce myself and get to know this person, because I might genuinely need to talk to them for a story down the road. or it might just come in handy because I have to write something difficult or say something that's not super positive, but having that moment of contact will help them understand a little bit more where I'm coming from, so that things go better. Not that the coverage is going to change either way, but putting that extra bit of work in. There are a lot more of those choices than I thought there would be. I kind of thought it was a choice where you just decide, okay, you're going to work hard and do everything, but there's a lot where it's just completely up to you. Like, are you going to do it or not? Are you going to put the work in or not? Are you going to ask this tough follow-up question? Or are you going to come back and like push someone on something? Or are you going to ask and dig to get to something? And it's not easy. And I've grown to really love that. So that's a little bit of a nebulous answer, I guess. But for me, I mean, I think it's true in almost any job where like you get, there's some, whether you're working in a cubicle and like you get to decide how productive you're going to be that day or whatever. But the best part about this job for me has been those decisions are less about how much of some arbitrary like workload you're going to get done, and more about what are you going to tell the fans and your readers that they didn't know before? How hard are you going to work to find those things out so that you can actually inform them and tell better stories? Because I think that like actually the whole game, whatever small part of it I might be involved in, I think the whole game really does benefit when you have people. I mean, you talk all the time about Steve Meserve down in Cedar Park and how the AHL would be a far better place if we had 32 Steve Meserves covering the league. And I think I've just tried to take it upon myself to whatever, little sphere of tiny work I have to do to try to be that person who's going to say yes. There have been times I haven't done it. That's not to say I'm perfect at all, but I've learned that you usually end up being really, really glad that you put that work in, because deep down when you've made the choice to do it, and when you've made the choice to, this is good enough for now. Yeah, that's a long-winded answer, but that's what I got.
It's good. Yeah, the one thing I will add to that, just that I think you've done a great job of, that I think is just kind of when you're working for yourself and is in this space, and I think it does apply when you work for a bigger company, and I've worked for bigger companies too, but there's no safety net, right? Like, and I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned over the past couple of years of, you don't have someone else to blame, right? Like when I worked for one of the largest outlets that covers this sport, there would be times where someone might not like what you wrote, or might not like a wording on something, and you could have a bit of the natural, well, editor did that, or that's just what we do there, and you don't get that safety net in the space, and you also don't get that when you're trying to build what we are building right here. So you're kind of answering to both your viewers, listeners, readers, whatever medium it is, and you're also answering directly to the subjects you cover, right? Like for example, for you, what you write about the Stars and what you cover and everything like that. There's no editor that's going to come in and say, well, we vouch for Robert, right? Like you have to kind of stand for yourself. And I wanted to just kind of give you some accolades, kudos, whatever word you want to call on that, because I think you've done a great job in this space of, I intentionally, it's funny, like people will laugh, and I intentionally, it's because places I was kind of kicked out of certain places in the media world for various reasons, and
I'd kick you out in a heartbeat if I saw you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but I enjoy that you can go and read about this series and watch this series, and Stars Thoughts is right up there next to any other publication. And I think that's such a cool thing you've built. And I just wanted to give you some credit on that, just in case there's no Stars game after either Thursday or Saturday this week.
Well, I appreciate it. I'll tell you what, I'll pass this credit on to another great independent place, Japers Rink, who for a long time as a blog covering the Washington Capitals, and they just announced they're kind of moving over to less, article-based stuff and having a Discord just for a lot of like personal reasons and stuff related to their lives. But Ted Leonsis, the owner of the Washington Capitals, gave him a shout out. So they posted, hey, end of an era, we're going to kind of be transitioning into more of a discussion-based platform instead of an article producing platform. And Ted Leonsis had this really kind shout out for them about everything they've meant to the community. And again, this is a, insanely wealthy, powerful owner who, owners have different perspectives on what the media's job is with regard to their team. But I give him a lot of credit because that's a site that was independent and always remained independent. And that's an NHL owner who basically grew to respect them enough to give them that shout out. And that means something, right? Not that your job is to curry favor, but they curried respect, and they did it by doing it the right way. Anyone who followed them for well over a decade now, I'm sure read a lot of their coverage, and it's cool to see places like that at the end after they put in, the decade, I'm like, what, 2 years into Star Slots and stuff, but places that have been around a lot longer who have actually earned that recognition. And that's something I think everyone in the independent space should strive for. It's not about your platform. It's about how much are you going to respect yourself and your work, and how hard are you going to go? Because like you said, at the end of the day, how hard you worked. It's not about having someone backing you up. It's about being okay with the work that you're putting in.
And that is our perfect way to get into our higher end, our higher podcast. I think now we're officially a podcast that we've had our,
philosophical,
philosophical old men yelling at clouds, but actually softly speaking to the clouds, not yelling at them. So now we're officially a podcast. We've done it. Took 5 episodes, but we are here. Seriously, everyone, thank you for listening. For those listening live, really appreciate it. Go, if you're still with us, like it, subscribe, do all of that. That helps us grow. If you're listening to an audio platform, do all the same. We will be back next week for episode 6 and the first episode that doesn't take place in April.
See y'all.